This Bailey's coffee has more flavor than you might expect. Let me show you how to make it. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the Whiskey Nerd, and like I said, this week I'm making a Bailey's coffee that has a little more flavor than you might expect. So let's get into what makes this Bailey's coffee a bit more special. Now, my pal Al from Whiskey Straight Al, you should check out his channel, there'll be a link down below. He sent me a message saying, how do I make my Bailey's coffee? Because a Bailey's coffee is a very simple cocktail. It's just essentially Bailey's coffee, a little bit of cream on top, maybe some nutmeg if you're feeling fancy. And otherwise, it's just a very simple cocktail, not really a lot of room for experimentation, or is there? So what I do is I look at the ingredients that are gonna go into the cocktail. So obviously you've got coffee, so you have to start with some good coffee. But then when you look at your other ingredients, you've got the cream that goes on top. You could just go for some standard whipped cream, straight out of a can even if you want. But what I do is I make my whipped cream a little bit more special. I add a little bit of orange bitters. I add a little bit of vanilla bean paste to really make the cocktail, make that creaminess on top, just that bit more flavorful, bit more rounded, bit more rich, and really help elevate the drink. I also don't use just Bailey's in my cocktail. Obviously Bailey's is the main event and I will be using mostly Bailey's in my cocktail, but I will be adding a little bit of Frangelico to my cocktail. So Frangelico is this kind of creamy, custardy hazelnut liqueur. Very, very flavorful, complements the flavors in Bailey's really well and adds just this really nice richness, a little bit of extra sweetness, and really does, I think, round out the cocktail. It doesn't take away from the fact that it's a Bailey's cocktail, it just adds a nice little bit of extra flavor. So let's get to making our cocktail. If you're making a lot of cocktails, you can just like whip up cream in a bowl, but since I'm only making one right now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna whip up my cream in my cocktail shaker. So I'm gonna take the spring off a strainer, I'm gonna put that into my tin on tin shaker, and then I'm gonna add my cream in here. So that's just gonna be a nice bit of cream, and when I shake it, that shaker, the spring in there, is gonna really whip up the cream very quickly. So that was a nice bit of cream, 2, maybe 3 dashes of orange bitters, to really get that flavor in there, and a little bit of this vanilla bean paste just in there, not too much. You don't want to really overpower the cocktail, just a nice little bit in there, gives a bit of extra sweetness, gives us a bit of extra flavor in there. And we'll pop the shaker on and shake it for about maybe 10-15 seconds just to get it nice and kind of thick but not too thick. Okay, then we're going to give this a quick little check. And what I do to check out is I just pour the cream between the two halves of my shaker. Oh yes, that is nice. It's thick enough that it'll sit on top without just pouring through into the rest of the cocktail, but it's still liquidy enough that we can pour it. So we're going to set this aside and then get our coffee. And thanks to Movie Magic, I've got my fresh hot coffee right here, so we're going to get ready to build our cocktail. This is one of those cocktails that we're going to build in the glass, and by adding our liquors in first, we can pour the coffee in on top and it'll mix it up nicely for us. So we're going to go in with 15 ml or half an ounce of Frangelico, giving us that nice, rich, creamy hazelnut flavor to the whiskey, to the cocktail. That's going to give us a really good kind of end result. Then we're going to get our Bailey's. This is going to give us more sweetness and a nice bit of creaminess in there. So this is going to be 30 ml or 1 ounce of Bailey's in there. And then we're going to fill up with our hot coffee. We're not going to go too high. We're going to go maybe near to the top of it, so we have some space for that cream at the end to really kind of balance out and richness, add some nice richness to the cocktail. So just there, just like that. And then we're going to pour our cream on top. So how I do that is I just get a nice bar spoon. I get my nice cream we just whipped up there, and I just pour it over the top. You don't have to be too fragile with it. You don't have to be too worried. I just get some nice cream up to the top, and for a final little finishing touch, what I like to do is a little bit of ground up nutmeg, just a pinch over the top. Give yourself that little bit of extra flavor, just kind of really round out the cocktail. And that right there is how I make a Bailey's coffee. Now real quick, before I taste this cocktail, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put out cocktail recipes on Fridays, I put out whiskey reviews on Wednesdays, so if you want to see more, make sure you hit subscribe. Sláinte. That's got so much flavor. That cream on top really does add a huge amount of flavor. Like, you wouldn't expect the little bit of orange bitters, the little bit of vanilla kind of extract, and then the pinch of nutmeg on top to have such an impact. But it really adds a nice bit of aroma and flavor to your first sip of the cocktail. And then behind it, you get that Baileys, you get that creaminess, you get that coffee note, you get a really nice, rich flavor of coffee, and of course you do get a little bit of hazelnut coming through at the end. This is absolutely one of those cocktails that most people should try out, because even if you're not a fan of like an Irish coffee, if you think that, you know, the whiskey with the black coffee, even with a bit of cream on top, if you think that's too strong, this is very nice. Like the Baileys does soften out that coffee note, it softens it out, makes it a bit more like a latte, makes it a bit more like a kind of a creamy coffee, and makes it much sweeter. The addition of the Frangelico does round it out, adds a nice bit of like texture to it, adds a nice bit of depth to it, and really does make a very nice cocktail. So I'm going to keep on enjoying this, and I will see you next time. Sláinte.